What's up, everybody? We are live. We are in the building. Thank you guys for tuning in. I see a bunch of people in the chat. Shout out to my mom who's in there. Getting started a little late tonight, but we're gonna get into some stuff. We appreciate y'all. You are watching Young Lion TV. Let's go.
Young lion, everywhere I look, they're dying. Everywhere I look, they're dying. Young lion, everywhere I look, they're dying. Everywhere I look, they're dying. Young lion, won't you get up and start fighting? Everywhere I look, they're hiding. Young
That's right, Young Lion TV. We are in the building, and I got my brothers with me tonight because we got some stuff to talk about. So shout out to everybody who's watching. Once again, if you are in the chat right now, make sure you drop a comment in there. I see Theris already did, my mom, a bunch of people. Hit that like button. Make sure you hit that like button and share this video. Shout out to all the people watching on Rumble already. We love you guys, our Rumble family over there. Make sure you drop a comment in. We got some shadow watchers on Rumble. They be in the caves of the lion's den. They don't come out of the shadows. They like to watch in the shadows and they don't drop no comments. But we know our boy Stiz is watching over there. Again, we need the support because the algorithm does not like what we talk about. So we need you guys to help us by sharing the video and get the algorithm going for us. So if you're watching right now, hit that like button, share this video with your friends. And I got with me this evening, I got my brothers in the building, of course, rocking the new merch. I like the salmon Grateful shirt over there.
Salmon color.
The salmon. Color. He went with the salmon. That's
it's pink.
It's salmon. It's salmon.
Yeah, it is salmon.
No, that fake Messi jersey he had on last week was pink. That right there is salmon.
Dang,
I call him out.
Dang, call me out.
I thought, didn't you call him out?
No,
not on air.
I called him out on the side.
Jake was like, I was looking at your jersey. It looked almost real, but then I noticed it was 2 stripes, not 3.
Well, listen, he's the coolest Asian in the podcast game. That's the only reason why he could pull off that jersey right there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and he could pull off the salmon Grateful shirt. He is Mr. Chang Sim in the building.
What up?
Oh, I got to give a big shout out to, I see our brother Eric Croft. He just said, "What's up, fellas?" in the chat. What up, Eric? Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you share the video if you're not afraid. But yeah, he's our soccer brother over there. And of course, I got my big brother, but he's everybody's big brother. He is the preacher, the teacher, the people reacher. He's Mr. Jacob Eugene Evans III, rocking the Young Lions cap there. Yes.
It's a good one.
Yes. And I am here. I am the navigator of this ship through these streaming waters, trying to make sure we have a smooth ride over here, trying to make sure we pull the clips up and get the conversation flowing in the right direction. And my name is Mr. Jamie Evans. Oh, I forgot. I'm every light-skinned person that you know, plus your cousin and your nephew and your uncle, or a white guy with a beard. I'm that guy. Yeah. And of course, last but not least, see, my mom is sick this evening. She's not feeling well. She wanted to take the night off. So it's a good thing that my kids have spring break. So I got my daughter over here running the producer side of things, and she's over there right now helping us out.
She's like her fingers on the button to press it, but she's like, I don't want to.
No, she's not going to show herself because she knows
button.
She's not she doesn't like how her hair looks right now, so she's not going to show herself. But she's my daughter. I love her, Miss Elise.
You look good.
Elise Evans.
You look fine.
She rolls her eyes. But yeah, so she's helping us out produce this evening. But again, shout out to all the people in the chat right now. I see a bunch of people chiming in. Make sure you guys share the video. Hit the like button. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button. And again, if you want to support what we do, the Young Lion podcast is something that we do where we come together and we talk about issues that are going on in the world, whether it's politics, whether it's cultural things, whether it's just life, relationships, family. From our perspective as men who grew up in like the most worldly system you could think of. We grew up like that. We grew up, made a lot of mistakes, but we learned a lot along the way, and we've come to a lot of realizations. A lot of spells were broken off of us in the process as we searched out and got closer to God. So this podcast is about us speaking on those topics from that perspective. And if that's something that you can get behind, you can always become a member and support the cause of the Young Lions. Go to our Patreon, patreon.com/youngliontv, where you can become a member over there. We have a bunch of tiers there for as little as $3 a month. You see, you can feed the lions there, and then it goes up from there if you want to join. Shout out to all of our Lion King level members who are in the chat right now. We love you very much. But yeah, and also we have our merch store here, which I'll show you. We got some new merch that me and Simone are rocking right now. But this is the new Grateful merch right here. And my daughter actually helped me design some of these. She did the top 3 hoodies right there.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
She helped me. She said we got to make them look good for her demographic, her age range.
So you would wear that, Lise? Yeah.
Yeah, she
that's
said
nice.
she said this is something that they would wear. So she helped me design these because I did it a little different. Remember, I showed y'all this is the one I did.
Yeah.
And then she was like, "No, you gotta do it." She said, "Let me show you."
That's funny because I don't see nothing different.
You don't see that different? Look, it has the small grateful here,
I see it.
and then the big grateful in the back.
Oh.
That's the. She said that's the style now.
Oh.
Yeah. Right, Lise? But yeah, so go to our website right now if you want to. It's jatan.com/shop if you want to get some of the new merch. And the beautiful thing about this merch that we really like is that, you know, all you're doing is you're rocking something that shows the world that you're grateful. You know what I mean? And it's about shifting people's mentality. In the post that I put up about the merch, it's about helping people shift their mind from anxiousness to gratefulness. You know, from worry to gratefulness. And sometimes you can't be both at the same time.
Right.
So sometimes just seeing that word will remind people to be grateful. So when you rock the merch, you're actually changing atmosphere. You're actually changing mindsets when you wear it. So there's a purpose behind it. So you can get that, and you'll be supporting the cause by getting that. So grateful merch available on the website. Let's go back here. Okay. But yeah, so it was Easter Sunday, right? We got together for a nice barbecue before that on Saturday. That was fun. All the crew was together. We played some frisbee sticks. That was fun.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
So was I.
I didn't have it.
Yeah, we whooped up on y'all pretty bad.
I mean, I had some shots, but you know, I usually am better than that.
Yeah.
I got hot in the last game, but every other game I missed everything.
Speaking of merch, I got my Young Lion coffee mug here.
That coffee smells good.
This is a nice Ethiopian Yirgacheffe bean that is dark roasted and grinded in my Breville, and it's good. So the big story on Easter Sunday, I'm sure you guys have heard about this, is that we can pull this up. Can you pull this up for me, please?
The trans.
So the way
visibility?
CNN Politics framed it is Republicans slam Biden for proclaiming Transgender Day of Visibility. Yeah. So Republicans slam Biden for that.
Do you have the clip of him talking about it?
No. What
No.
clip of him talking about it?
Because they asked him.
Oh
about
yeah,
it.
yeah. I have that. But first, I want to go into the story a little bit. So, it said the CNN frames that Republicans are taking aim at President Joe Biden for proclaiming that Easter Sunday as Transgender Day of Visibility, though the 2 days only coincided this year by chance. The Transgender Day of Visibility, which was started in 2009 as a day of awareness to celebrate the success of transgender and gender nonconforming people, is held annually on March 31st.
I guess success is subjective.
Yeah. So I just like to point out, started in when?
Say that again.
When did it start?
I didn't-
Did you guys hear that? Started back in 2009. Who was that under?
Obama.
Oh, bam.
Barack
Obama.
Obama is the one who
Obama.
started the whole that whole idea of the day of visibility. Someone posted up on Twitter all of the like LGBTQ days throughout there is so many. There is so many, dude. Like every month there's something.
Yeah, because you got to make yourself. You got to prove yourself. You got to make yourself. I'm trying to think of the right word. It's almost like you got to make yourself legal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like legitimate.
Right.
I guess you could say. You know, because like it's kind of like you have an illegitimate child.
Right.
You know, you got to
middle
make
child?
yourself.
Yeah, that's me.
What?
But the outrage is not because of the transgender day of visibility. Like, of course, people will roll their eyes at that or whatever, but it's
Right.
because you make a declaration of it on Easter Sunday
Yeah.
Yeah.
and totally like negate everything that Christians say they believe in.
Right.
And it's like Christians are always getting the short end of the stick. Like,
Yeah.
Let's see them
because
do
they
that
They don't care about them
on a
anymore.
Muslim holy day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Did you see the tweets? The White House tweets?
No.
It was the Easter one was it literally just said Happy Easter.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Right.
Then when they talked about the trans, it's all emotional.
Yeah.
They're saying all this stuff.
They did this
They
glowing.
clearly what they're what they care about is not.
Yeah, it's virtue signaling. Christians don't deserve any of that recognition. Yeah, so let's pull this up, Lise. This is from the actual White House because the whole narrative was going around that Joe Biden didn't do this. He didn't, this is not what he did.
That's because they're backpedaling
Right.
now.
But let's look at it right here from whitehouse.gov. This is from the White House's website right here. Proclamation on Transgender Day of Visibility 2024. And it goes through this whole spiel. But let's go down here. It says, now, therefore, I, Joseph R. Biden Jr., President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim March 31st, 2024 as Transgender Day of Visibility. I call upon all Americans to join us in lifting up the lives and voices of transgender people, blah, blah, blah. And then he signs it at the end, Joseph R. Biden. So isn't that him declaring it?
Do you think he really? Let's be real. Let's be real.
Technically, it's supposed to be him, right?
It's supposed to be him, but let's be real.
We know it's not really him.
They're giving this dude.
Of course.
They're giving this dude an ice cream and like, here you go. Sign this.
Remember when Karine Jean-Pierre got caught tweeting from his Twitter account by accident? You remember that?
That's
Yeah, like she went to tweet something from hers, but because of course, like she's probably in charge of his Twitter, like she tweets for him.
yeah.
But they pretend
So
that
she forgot to.
she forgot to switch it back.
Right.
But they pretend that he tweets on his own. You know what I mean? Because
I believe Trump tweets on his own,
of course he does, but
not Joe Biden.
but it's just funny that like
I mean, he might not tweet, like actually write the tweet, but he says it
yeah.
because you could tell with Trump. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? With Biden, it's like he has no clue.
Yeah. I mean, he obviously has no clue because this is his response to when they questioned him about it.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Mr. President, what does Easter mean to you, sir? Sir, what does Easter mean to you?
Time for forgiveness and people getting together and living in love and no phoniness. Be straight with people.
And Mr. Speaker Johnson the other
What?
He said,
Is
no
that wait?
phonies. No
First of all, let's
phonies.
start
Just
there.
be straight.
Let's start there.
Okay, bub.
What does Easter mean to you? Time to about forgiveness and get together with love, no phoniness, and be straight with people. What?
I mean, hey, that's there's some good stuff in there. If it was true, if the hypocrisy wasn't.
I'm just saying, like, you can't have a bet. Like, can't we just say it's about the resurrection of Jesus? Like,
Yeah.
that. Like, if you can't even say that,
Yeah, dude, but come on. This is This is the left we're talking about.
But he's supposed to be a devout Catholic, remember?
Yeah.
That's what they sold him as to all of us. Pull it back up, Lise, because he gets even better after this.
Today said you, sir, Speaker Johnson said you betrayed the tenet of Easter by proclaiming Easter Sunday as Transgender Day. He called that outrageous and abhorrent. What do you say to Speaker Johnson?
He's thoroughly uninformed.
Uninformed how?
I didn't do that.
See, he himself said he didn't do that, which I think he's telling the truth there, because I'm pretty sure
either he's telling the truth or he doesn't remember.
I think he's telling the truth. I think there's so many things that he doesn't do. Like,
Yeah.
he just kind of goes through his day, going from event to event. They tell him where to stand. They tell him where to go. They give him
shelter him.
They give him those cue cards that have the big writing on it with the yellow crossed out. You sit here, then you go there. Remember, they kept showing.
He's not on X, so he's not hip to what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
He's in his own.
He's in his little bubble. So, and then I want to show this right here. So this is apparently, I sent this to you guys, but I just want to show it on the podcast. This is apparently the person that founded the day.
Possessed.
Hi, I'm Rachel Crandall Crocker, and I'm Executive Director of Transgender Michigan, and I am founder and organizer of the International Transgender Day of Visibility. And I want to share with you how that all happened.
Okay. And that's all we need to see.
What?
It's like we're not doing enough to deal with certain things that need to be dealt with as mental illness. I feel like there's clearly issues that need to be dealt with certain people, and we're just like
You could say they're dealing with it, or there's care, but it's just really bad care.
Well, it's like
The outcome.
Don't they call
care.
it gender affirming care, which is
Yeah.
really like mutilating people? Like they call it care.
Well, that's what the outcome of that care. You can tell it's not doing anything,
Right.
or it is doing something, but it's causing more harm than good.
Yeah. I mean, not only causing harm, it's infecting other young people in a lot of ways. When you see like a lot of these young kids falling into the traps of these things. I mean, how many interviews have we seen of young people that get into these spaces online where they start getting affirmed little by little into these communities until they really believe that this is who they are, and then later regret it. But it's irreversible at that point, especially for young women.
Yeah,
I mean, for young men too. Once they mutilate their genitalia in certain ways, there's no going back.
No having kids, man.
yeah. They're thinking about the momentary, not thinking about the a longer or a lifelong understanding of what can happen.
Yeah.
It's literally like experiments, because this has never happened before
Yeah.
in history. We've never done this before.
Yep.
So all this stuff is experimentation,
And we're gonna find out.
and we're gonna find out.
The first
What's
generation
that?
of that.
What did they say? You gonna find out today?
Shout out to Jeffrey, one of our Lion King members. He said, "Hey guys, watching from Orlando, Florida." Courtney, another Lion King level. She said, "Hey family, what's up, sis?" Missy Hughes dropped a comment in there. Thank you so much for joining. Well, we got a bunch of Diane Page said, "Hey there, I posted a pic on your reel about Coca-Cola. I have a look. Give me some advice. This third time, last was 2 years ago, watching from Australia. We got attacked by tens in Melbourne, Australia, by them whilst we were rallying against indoctrination of our children." Oh wow, I think you're talking about the transgender stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's getting crazy.
Yeah.
You don't have to apologize. These lost souls should, especially when we aren't that young. We tried educating these folks too. We aren't against them personally, but do not agree with them trying to persuade our young children to change. Then it's too late. Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah, so I mean that was huge news over Easter, of course, and all today. I've been hearing about it because I mean yesterday too. It was just like people, and of course on the left they're gonna make it seem like conservatives are overreacting and blah blah blah. But I mean, you gotta understand, like, Christians are at the point, like, after this whole Christ is King thing being weaponized, and that you can't say that now because that's seen as hateful, and then you want to on
the day of resurrection.
Yeah.
One of the most. I mean, it doesn't truly fall on that day, but
right. It's the day we recognize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The world recognizes Easter as the day of Christ.
Yeah.
Rising from the dead, and this falls on it. Just imagine if the roles were reversed, if they set a day for, something that they believed in or whatever like that.
Yeah.
And, the
people were out there preaching Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. They would be
livid.
Like this woman from Australia said, they would be attacking people.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it. We've seen them physically get violent with people who are
Yep.
just preaching out in the streets. Like, during one of the pride parades, we saw people who were preaching about Jesus, and they weren't out there saying, "You're going to hell, repent." They were just preaching the gospel, and people surround them, threaten them, take their stuff from them, hit them. It's like, come on. Let's look at the press secretary herself, the way she tried to spin it. You guys see this?
Jean-Pierre.
Surprised by the misinformation that's been out there around this, and I want to be very clear. Every year for the past several years, on March 31st, Transgender Day of Visibility is marked. And as we know, for folks who understand the calendar and how it works, Easter falls on different Sundays, right? Every year. And this year it happened to coincide with Transgender Visibility Day. And so that is the simple fact. That is what has happened. That is where we are. And I do want to say a couple of things because I think it's important here. As you just stated in your questions, what we've been hearing out there, a lot of misinformation done on purpose. And as a Christian who celebrates Easter with family, President Biden stands for bringing people together and upholding the dignity and freedoms of every American. Now, sadly, and it's not surprising, right? It is actually unsurprising that politicians are seeking to divide and weaken our country with cruel, hateful, and dishonest rhetoric. It is dishonest what we have heard the past 24 hours.
It's dishonest to say that Joe Biden declared it Transgender Day when he literally did. It's on the White House website.
Yeah.
Like, what is you're just pointing out the fact that this guy's not who he says he is. He talks about being a devout Catholic, but he's always talking about minors having transgender surgery. He's always talking about, abortion. I mean, he doesn't do anything that shows that he believes in Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's the issue. Like,
Yeah.
these things need to be, at least we need to have a conversation about it.
Right.
Like, you're not going to have a conversation with Joe Biden. But,
Right.
But the problem is you can't call yourself devout Catholic and then everything you say and do is opposite.
It's the opposite of that. Yeah. Come on. Like, you're telling on yourself. And we as the public need to be able to speak on these things and show each other, like, all right, these people are liars. Like, at least expose that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, this is Joe Biden forgetting even what the word Easter was when he was out on the thing talking to the people. He forgot what the word Easter was. Let's watch it.
God bless you all. Enjoy the day. And I'm coming down to do that Easter egg roll in just a minute. Thank you all so very, very much. Thanks, everybody. And by the way, say hello to oyster bunnies. Come on up, bunnies. Get up here so they can see you.
The oyster bunnies. Say hello to the oyster bunnies, guys. And that's the guy who apparently wrote that whole soliloquy about Transgender Day. Was the guy who said oyster bunnies right there. Mm-hmm.
What's an Easter roll?
I don't know. Dude. Oh man, oyster bunny, so funny, bro.
Lobster roll. He's talking about maybe he's getting a bunch of stuff mixed up.
No,
Easter roll, lobster roll.
Come on, man. Yeah, so that was our eventful Easter this year. We got some other events coming up though. Oh wait, let me show this real quick because then on CNN, I did want to get to this because I was talking about the Christ is King thing, and no, this is MSNBC. They were going into that a little bit and trying to, flip things on how evil Trump is. So let's show this.
We're looking at a whole weekend of these types of upside down realities where Trump takes reality, twists it, and throws it against his people. I have to ask, though, about the people who have the means, whether it be leadership positions, financial means, educational means, who could, if they were invited or if they donated, go to Mar-a-Lago on a Saturday night and then go to church and celebrate Jesus' love on a Sunday morning.
Well, you know, what we saw on Easter Sunday was a remarkable display of venom and hatred. I mean, really to the point, Mika, where you're right to wonder, is he okay? And we know the answer is no, he's not okay. But what's even more disturbing than that venom and hatred on Easter Sunday itself was the buildup of Holy Week. It featured Trump sharing posts where he compared himself, calling a post where a supporter compared him to Jesus and the trials he faces in court in New York to the trials Jesus faced. Is a beautiful post. He's selling Bibles. And then, you know, the sad thing is this isn't just confined to Trump anymore. We used to be able to say, or used to try to comfort ourselves by saying, well, Donald Trump is the bad guy. And then there's just so many good people.
We comfort ourselves by saying Donald Trump is the bad guy and everyone else is good.
Who are fooled. And there are still good people who are fooled by him. But it's become increasingly clear that Trumpism and that Trump ethic is really leaking into American Christianity itself. As we saw.
You hear this? Christianity is becoming infected by Trump.
Yeah, well, this is the whole Christian nationalist ploy, right? That they've been trying to deploy on the nation.
Yep. But it's the idea that Christians are now going to be targeted as the enemy, the evil ones. Period.
When misguided during Holy Week, Christians all over Twitter were posting Christ is King, specifically aimed at Jewish Americans, specifically aimed to assert religious dominance in a very gross and ugly way.
Is that why they were doing it?
No. And we're seeing this just leak out, Mika, and it is very distressing. But even more than that, it is very dangerous.
It's very dangerous. People will be killed because people tweeted Christ is King. It's very dangerous, guys.
Yeah. Christ is King. We should be allowed to say it.
What's dangerous is what they're doing.
Right.
What's dangerous is that when you take somebody's words and you twist them, when you take what people are doing and you twist it to try to to condemn them.
We showed the 10 steps to a genocide years ago on here, right? And a few of those steps were what they're doing here, where it's like you have to show people as like the groupthink that they have is dangerous. You have to dehumanize them. You have to show them as dangerous.
Yeah.
Because then that justifies whatever actions you take on those people. So they've been setting that up for years with Trump, calling people maggots, calling people deplorables. When you look at the January 6th, they're insurrectionists. They're a threat to our democracy. All of these things are setting the stage, and now they're lumping Christians in with that.
Christian
nationals, and now it's the Christ is King thing, and now it's just the Trumpism is leaking into Christians. So now it's going to be first. Then it was MAGA Republicans. Watch them start saying MAGA Christians. Watch them start saying that, and then it's going to be this way of continuing to other people, so that when it gets to the point where they need to take action, or they need to start censoring people, or they need to start, telling you those are the bad guys, you'll go along with it. All the people. The only good thing about it is nobody really watches this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And you see the actual shift in like Gen Z and thankfully like people my daughter's age, like they are not falling for it anymore. I know you talk about your son too, like they see through the nonsense that's been going on. I think it's because the culture online is a little bit more less persuaded by these mainstream narratives that we see from the left.
Well, it's been a programming, especially from like, I would say like the boomers, and
definitely from the boomers
and on, because isn't it interesting how like the boomers were like the they were against corporations.
Yes.
They were against the government,
military,
so to speak, right?
war. Yeah.
But then they became
Yeah.
that infrastructure.
They gained power through those institutions, and then they didn't want to give it up.
Yeah, because power corrupts, right? What's that? What's that saying?
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting, like if you're if you have a high intelligence without moral standards and grounding, you have a higher proclivity to corrupt.
Yeah.
To be corrupted and to become a psychopath. I was watching that with Jordan Peterson, but I obviously we're going to go into some of that stuff, and he talks about some of that in this debate between him and Destiny. But yeah, I find that interesting that we go into things with a sort of benevolence.
Yeah.
But if your benevolence isn't grounded in truth, then what happens is it was really never benevolence to begin with, right?
Yeah.
It's like you might want to do good for people, right? But what is good? You know, what are these things?
Yeah,
How do
we
you
can't
define
know
these
good
things?
unless we know God.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's impossible.
So you have to be grounded in truth,
right,
in order to bring about truth in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
or else it becomes perverted, and it's that pendulum. You know, it just swings the other way.
Yeah. Shout out to Emma, joined in, another Patreon member. We love you, bro. Another soccer brother, too. And Diane Page said, you all raise good children with common sense. Thank you. I mean, that's why we do this. We're trying to continue that culture through we're trying to build a community around this so that we have like-minded people that think the ways we're trying to think, that aren't just following the mainstream narrative, that are thinking for themselves independently, that are asking questions. My daughter asks me questions all the time about stuff because she knows, like, I'm going to tell her the truth. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat things, you know.
Yeah. They want to know the truth and not want to be right.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that's more important. Some people don't want to know the truth. They want to
validate their own.
Use truth.
Right.
Which is different. And like you said, it's validation.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what we're seeing a lot. We're seeing that manipulation of of what is true.
Right.
Right. But what is true is actually what is true perverts the intention of God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like think about in the beginning, right? When the serpent entered into the garden, what happened? There was only one commandment. Think about how simple this was, right?
Yeah.
One commandment: don't eat of this tree.
There was two commandments. One was don't eat of the tree. The other one was be fruitful and multiply.
Right, but that was connected. That was something that you just did, right? But what I'm saying is that, like,
there was one,
the one that you don't do, right. That's the commandment that you have to keep watch of.
Right,
is don't eat of this fruit, right? Don't eat of this tree,
right.
Don't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? Or you'll surely die. Right. So that's it's interesting how in the commandment, or what God says, you hear it and you abide by it, but you don't really know why he said it. You don't know the intention.
Right.
So then that's where I believe the serpent comes in and tricks Eve.
That's the wiggle room, if you will, where he can get in there and be like, well, you don't know everything, so I can come in and confuse you. Yeah.
And the reason why God doesn't tell us the why is because we learn the why through doing his commandment. So when he says you won't surely die, right?
Yeah.
It was true that they wouldn't die in the isolated moment,
right?
When you ate it, right? That's what. So when you focus on truth, what people who want to deceive you, they isolate it,
right?
But God is looking at the whole picture.
Right.
He's looking at the eternal. He's looking at everything, right? He's accounting for everything.
Right.
But when somebody wants to deceive you, and what psychopaths do is they want to gain a power over you by focusing you on an isolated truth. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
They will cause you to focus on it for that moment and cause you to lose a grounding.
You know what's funny? Like the simplest form of that is magic tricks.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's how they pull the trick off.
Right.
They have you focus on something that's really there.
Yeah.
A truth that you're like, all right, I see that. And then they do a sleight of hand that tricks you, and then you're like, whoa, how did you do that? You feel like they tell you it's magic.
Right.
You know, that's how magic, the simplest form of that deception works.
Yeah, so that deception, he was, because it says the serpent was cunning, right?
Yeah.
So he was cunning in the way of he had like in James it talks about this wisdom that's demonic wisdom, right? So you have wisdom from above is what? It's pure. So purity is what's clear, right?
Yeah.
When something is pure, right? What did Jesus come to bring? The truth, right? But then the truth makes things clear.
Right.
There's no muddy water. It's clear water, right? It's pure.
Right.
So it's clean.
Yep.
Right? But when you listen to deceptive wisdom, the point is to rule over you.
Yeah.
The point is to get you under its thumb, and then that's what causes impurity, right? That's what causes uncleanness, right? And you don't see things clearly.
Right.
And that's literally what happens to Eve. She said, because she says it, she's like, yeah, but God said, don't eat of this tree or you'll die. And he's like, did he say that you'll surely die? Like he's trying to get her off of settled ground, right? And to unsettle her, to make her think in a way that is demonic, right? So then what that does is that causes you to become unsettled, and then you're ready to receive something that isn't necessarily true.
Right.
That isn't, well, it might be true in the moment, right? Because they didn't die, but they eventually died.
Right.
Right. They didn't die in that moment, but eventually they did die. Like 900 years later.
Right. And they cursed the entire human race to die.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So let's keep going. I got to give a shout out to Theris for sending 200 stars. Thank you, Theris. We appreciate you. If anybody wants to support, send some stars, or you can donate to the Cash App too. We have a $ youngliontv on Cash App if you want to just, support what we do in that way as well. So another story that's going kind of crazy. We got a big solar eclipse coming up. Everybody, I'm sure you guys have been hearing about this. There's a lot of speculation going around. We can pull this article up, Lee, so we can just kind of show the groundwork for this. Why April's total solar eclipse will be a historic event in the U.S. So the main gist of it, this is going to be a huge solar eclipse passing right across the U.S. The last one was in 2017, I think, or something like that, right? Yeah.
Yep, I know because I was on vacation.
And the next one won't be until 2044. So that's why this is like, hugely historic. And a lot of people are saying that the path it's taking, is very interesting. I sent you guys that video. I don't know if you watched it.
I didn't, but I already kind of knew. I know most of it anyway.
Okay. So it says the eclipse across America will arrive live Monday, April 8th, beginning at 2 p.m. Eastern time on ABC News, blah, 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 blah. So apparently a lot of people are going to be coming to these cities because it's going to pass through a certain path, and certain cities are going to get hit with this eclipse and get covered. Are we going to even see it here?
I
don't know. We might be able to see it a little bit.
Okay.
It's not going over us exactly.
Right.
Ohio, right?
Yeah, Ohio's one. It's going through Texas all the way through to yeah. But so there's all these other stories. There's a statewide emergency declared in Indiana ahead of the solar eclipse. People are like, "Why are you having a statewide emergency. They're claiming it's because they're expecting an influx of people. So this is the path right here. You can see it's coming. It's going to hit Mexico there and travel up Dallas, Little Rock, Indianapolis, Cleveland, Buffalo, Montreal, and pass through that way. But yeah, so in Indiana, they declared a state of emergency. There's a bunch of other cities that it's passing through that they've put out bulletins for people to stock up on supplies and water and food and stuff. And people are like, "What is going on?" Like,
it's weird.
And they're claiming it's because there's going to be a lot of people there. But how many people are really going to rush to watch an eclipse? Like, I mean, I'm sure there'll be more people than normal, but that many where it needs to be a state of emergency?
Yeah.
That's kind of strange.
I keep on hearing stories about cicadas.
That's the other, cicadas, the cicadas. So this is one of those times where the different breeds of cicadas are all coming up at the same time. Because usually there's different ones. They what's the word? They
hibernate.
They hibernate at different times.
Yeah.
So it's like they rotate when they come up.
Right.
But this is when they both are going to coincide,
yeah.
and they're both going to come out. So it's going to be mad cicadas
They
coming
said
out.
it's going to be like millions
at the same time when the eclipse happens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then I saw this story from NASA. I don't know if you guys heard about this. So NASA is going to be launching rockets into the moon's shadow during the solar eclipse.
Yeah. Did you hear about what it's called?
We gonna get into that. I got it right here. So NASA will launch 3 sounding rockets during the total eclipse on April 8th, 2024 to study how the Earth's upper atmosphere is affected when sunlight momentarily dims over the portion of the planet. It's already kind of strange and weird. Then it gets even stranger. So we always talk about the weird names they come up with, right? Remember we had the one that was named Sperm or something? No, it was, what was it? Eel. So this one is called the Atmospheric Perturbations Around Eclipse Path, a.k.a. APEP, right? That's the acronym, APEP. Okay. Sounding rockets will launch from NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia to study disturbances in the ionosphere, blah, blah, blah. That's what they're telling us. But they're basically launching 3 rockets at the moon during this eclipse. Now let's look at APEP. So APEP is an Egyptian god. It's an Egyptian deity that is like, it's the snake that swallows the sun.
Wow.
So because Ra was the solar deity, the bringer of light, and thus the upholder of Ma, Apep was viewed as the greatest enemy of Ra. So they're firing rockets at the sun. Ra's the sun god. The rockets that they're firing at the sun are called Apep, who was the enemy of Ra.
What's going on?
What is going on?
What are they doing?
What is happening? Okay, and then so that's not
Jeff did some jobs for NASA. What's going on, Jeff?
Come on, Jeff. Tell us what's going on. Now that's not the only thing. Okay? Because people are pointing this out too. So CERN, this is from the Daily Mail. CERN is going to be firing up to test its most powerful particle accelerator during the solar eclipse to search for invisible matter that secretly powers our universe.
What?
So we got cicadas coming up. One of the most historic solar eclipses that's going to be pretty long in comparison to others. We got them firing rockets with the name of the sun god's arch enemy, and then we got CERN firing up to test its most powerful particle accelerator to search for invisible matter.
Does it say what the program's called?
What program?
The NASA
CERN.
program.
Oh, the NASA.
Let's see.
Because it's called Serpent Deity Program.
Nah.
What?
I'm dead serious.
Serpent Deity Program?
Yes.
Are you kidding me? Like, what is happening? They don't say it on here.
Is it just a TikTok that says that?
No, I looked it up myself. I did see it in a TikTok, but But then I looked it up myself to make sure.
Dude, they can't be more obvious.
Bro, it's like they do it every
Just
time.
look up Serpent Deity NASA program.
Remember we made that video joking about they were going to send that snake-like eel thing.
Yeah, that looked like a sperm.
They look like a sperm
Yeah.
to Mars, and we were like, "Oh, it's a sex ritual."
Yeah, yep.
Like the rocket goes into space, it's going to eject this sperm. It's going to land on the moon of.
Yeah, look, this is Forbes, March 26th. It says the Space Agency project, Serpent Deity, atmospheric perturbations around the eclipse path.
Like, that's not even a good name. They just wanted to name. They had to find a way to make it APEP, dude.
Perturbation.
Come on, man.
Exactly. We'll investigate how that drops in sunlight and temperatures affect Earth's upper atmosphere. This is, like you said, APEP is named after the serpent deity from ancient Egyptian mythology.
Yeah. And it's the serpent that eats. So in their mythology, when the sun would set, it's the serpent eating the sun.
Okay,
right?
gotcha.
Right, and then it comes up again every day. You know.
So this is from Forbes.com.
Wow. So for some reason NASA, I'm looking through this article. They're not mentioning that the name of that. But that's crazy. So we got the Serpent Project where they're gonna shoot APEP at the sun, and then we got CERN firing up at the same time.
Yeah.
Jeff said no idea about NASA's motivation. I have to talk to some of my insiders.
Yeah, please do. Please let us know what's going on here. We got a little video here who's breaking it down a little bit. If you can pull this up, Lise. Thank you.
And during the eclipse on April 8th, NASA will fire 3 rockets named
it does
after
say serpent
Apep,
deity,
the Egyptian serpent god, whose goal was to devour Ra, the sun. And when the sun reemerges after 3 minutes of darkness, it will be likened to the rebirth of Horus, their new king of the Golden Age. CERN, known for practicing occult
Remember we showed this video from CERN's
rituals
thing?
At a statue of Shiva, the Hindu god who symbolizes death, destruction, and the end of an age, will be firing up their Large Hadron Collider to full power during the solar eclipse. And Israel, who is in the midst of committing genocide, is preparing to sacrifice a red heifer, a ritual sacrifice to prepare them for taking back the Temple Mount.
Red heifers, to be precise. Some Jews and Christians believe they're the key to rebuilding the historic Jewish temple in Jerusalem.
So we were talking about this off the podcast last week, but yeah, they're preparing this part of it, but this is not during the eclipse. This is supposed to be for Passover.
Mm-hmm.
That they're preparing to sacrifice these red heifers. That they've already built the altar, and they got the heifers from Texas.
This is the beginning of the dedication of a new temple, which has not been around since 70 AD. When it was destroyed by the Romans.
Right.
And that was 40 years after Jesus had died. And it was 40 years after he prophesied the destruction of the temple.
Wow. So they're preparing to start the new temple. And this is the sacrifice that needs to be made to start the new temple. Just coincidentally, they got the heifers from Texas, though, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So this is all happening around the same time, though. So you got Easter, and someone else made a video breaking down how like April 8th is in like the old Bible text. April 8th is considered the day that Jesus was resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know how they actually had dates though in the Bible.
I saw something on that where they broke it down with I don't know exactly, but they were trying to say with the shepherds bringing in their flock or something like that, and it would be more at a certain time.
Yeah,
and they threw in the first day of April is
April Fool's Day. Yeah,
is them trying to say that fooled you. You know, we did this and then fooled. It sounds so much like a straight up, you know, what mom would watch.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you have no idea.
So
my mom sent us a hold on, I gotta pull it up. Too. I'll tell you.
I actually saw it too. I saw it on social media.
Oh,
People
you were in that text. Yeah. Let me pull it up real quick because I was laughing, boy. Here we go. All right, pull this up, Lise. So we always get on my mom. If you watch the podcast, we always get on her because she be getting fooled sometimes by these Facebook posts or whatever. So people were posting this up. I saw it on Twitter. I saw it on Facebook. Like, oh my God, McDonald's is just right in the open with it. It's a Baphomet burger with a little toy that's a demon Baphomet, and people were sharing it all over the place. And I was like, I started laughing. I'm like, this is fake, guys. Someone made this in AI. It's clearly fake. So this is not real. If you see this on the internet, it's not real. You've been duped. But yeah, it was just funny.
Hey man,
dude, I would not be surprised though.
I wouldn't, but I would be surprised if they went that blatant. Like, that's crazy.
But again, so like, there's all this information, right?
Yeah.
But that's where the speculation and the presumption can come into play.
Right.
And to me, that's where the deception comes in. Like,
that's what I try to avoid on here.
Right.
Like,
these things are, yes, it's true. These things are all happening, right? The red heifer,
right?
This eclipse.
But we're just saying, like, what does it mean?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Like, even, we didn't even talk about that, but even like, its path is supposed to be going over 7 Ninevehs, which is interesting. And the last one went over 7 Salems, right?
Yeah.
So all this stuff is kind of interesting. And it's 7 years from the last one.
Right.
So it's just weird to me.
It's weird how all these things are lining
and
up.
I'll tell you what, the day that the last one happened, that was my first day of vacation. And I had the craziest day.
That's right.
You know about it. I'm not going to go into it here, but that was a crazy day. So I don't know. There's definitely things that happen, and there's definitely things that we got to pay attention to, but we can't fall under the trap of trying to presume that we know that what it is.
Yeah, because so many people are saying, this means Jesus is coming back. This means, it's the end times, and like that's what people are going to. They're going to that.
I think that's where you gotta like, obviously there's signs, right?
Yeah.
There's things happening, and that's where we gotta humble ourselves, turn to God, pray about it.
I mean, because Jesus said, "No man will know the time or season." Like, you can't. You're not going to be able to figure it. You still thinking you're going to be able to figure it out is arrogance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, isn't that what it's? We just said it. Higher intelligence.
Yeah.
Without grounding leads to the proclivity of malevolence and psychopathy.
Psychopathy, yeah.
So
psychopathy.
So what are we seeing? We're seeing that AI,
right?
AI is artificial intelligence, right? It's actually a higher intelligence than we have the capacity to understand. And
I don't know if it's a higher intelligence. I think it's a faster intelligence.
I would say higher intelligence in terms of the capacity of what it can hold on to,
right?
That we can't think of all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So faster, but it's just like in terms of actually thinking on the things that we need to think on. No, definitely not.
Right.
But in terms of like being used as a weapon of deception,
right?
Definitely, yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So if it can be, it can be a predictor.
Yeah.
Right. Think about like predictions. If you can even pretend to know things, right? Or you can just be very highly intelligent, and you can look like a prophet, right?
You can be good at seeing
look
trends.
like a prophet. Yeah, you can be good at seeing trends.
Yeah.
This is what they're doing a lot of times.
Yep.
And that's how they manipulate you too.
Yep.
They can say, "Oh, we have a higher capacity of intelligence. We have the data. We're looking at all these things. We're quantifying these things. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so
isn't that what psychics do?
In a way, yeah.
They like they read you in certain ways, and they're able to they actually use your body language to guide them into saying things that you are going to agree with, and then
they observe certain things
Right.
that a lot of people don't observe.
All right, let's play a little bit more of this video, see if there's anything else happening that we don't know about.
Jerusalem and to beckoning the Messiah. To understand, you have to go back nearly 2,000 years when the ancient Romans destroyed the last temple in the city. To rebuild it, these believers point to the Bible's book of Numbers. It commands the Israelites to sacrifice a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. Only then can the temple rise again. Those sacred cows were showcased in Washington at a recent prayer gathering. Many evangelicals believe these red heifers will usher Christ's second coming.
And we need the Messiah to come, right? So for me, the red heifer, it's red for the blood of Jesus Christ.
A massive altar already awaits, where the heifers are to be burned.
According to some believers, the ceremony needs to be performed right here on the Mount of Olives, looking directly into where the temple once stood. But something else now stands in its place.
Once they forcibly take the Temple Mount away from billions of Muslims worldwide, it will predictably thrust the world into the peak of chaos that these secret societies have been designing for centuries. And their plan is to bring order out of this chaos, with their divine king to rule over the world. But these are just rituals, and fear is an illusion. We can always choose love.
Okay, yeah, so we get it. They're going into speculation a little bit. Yeah, so that's just interesting. So we got the eclipse coming, cicadas coming. What?
Mom just said, did they sacrifice the red heifers on Good Friday?
No, they're doing it on Passover. Yeah, so we got the heifers getting sacrificed. We got the eclipse. We got the cicadas.
Wait, they are doing it on Passover, but you're supposed to sacrifice a lamb on Passover.
This is what I saw. They're doing it on Passover.
Okay. I mean, I'm not, I don't know all the ins and outs.
I saw that on the news article I was reading about it, but I mean, maybe they were wrong. It's interesting though.
It's a lot of wild stuff.
A lot of wild stuff going on
at once.
Yeah.
We're definitely in some crazy times.
Crazy times. But we gotta be. This is why it's important for us to be mindful,
not anxious,
praying, not anxious, grateful. Yeah. I just wanted to show this story because we need to watch out for this coming here with the all of the migrants and the asylum seekers that we have here and everything, the chaos that's going on here. This is going on in the UK right now. A family they're being told by the government that they might be forced to sell their home to make room for asylum seekers. So they got.
You mean undocumented citizens?
I mean illegal migrants. That's what I mean. I mean criminal migrants. Let's just talk about what they really are. Criminal migrants, people that are entered the country through illegal means, not the right way. Right. Everybody knows I'm not against immigrants. My wife is an immigrant. Okay, my best friend is an immigrant sitting right there in a salmon
I'm a
shirt.
citizen now.
But people that enter the country through illegal means that's a criminal act. So you can't stop trying to use spell-like language to make us okay with this.
But when you're rewarded for being a criminal,
you're
you're
incentivized. You're incentivizing more people to come.
Yeah.
So this is happening in the UK. They're warning people that they may have to give up their homes. It says Jose and Ted Saunders, the couple who received a letter from the council suggesting their property could be subject to a compulsory purchase order and used to house asylum seekers. So they're saying stuff like, this house is too big for you. You need to sell it to us and move somewhere smaller so we can make room for other people. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, this is the letter that they received here, so you guys can go look at that.
Like sounds like you don't really own what you think you own.
You will own nothing and be happy. Listen, they are trying to push communism to us, whether we like it or not. This is the move. This is the
communism. You could say a mix of communism, authoritarianism.
Yeah.
Even
dictatorship,
elitism, dictator. All because if you think like fascism, is Hitler. They say he was a fascist, but he was also his party was socialist, right?
Yeah. Yep. So there was a mix there. Yep. Yeah. I just wanted to show that and show this as well along those same lines. You can pull this up, please. So this was in New York, right? Listen to this story right here.
Police sprung into action, hopping out of their squad cars after they got a call about a man with a gun. When they arrived, they chased 24-year-old Hector de Soso Villata, believed to be from Venezuela, into the basement of this Hull Avenue home. Another man, 22-year-old Javier Alborno, tried to get away with another gun before he was also arrested. Playing on your screen now are 4 of the 8 suspects that were under arrest being walked out one by one from police. When a search warrant was in place, investigators recovered 2 more loaded guns, 3 loaded extended magazines, a box of ammunition, and a bag of ketamine mixed with cocaine. Moments ago, we spoke with a neighbor just next door about the landlord and those uninvited guests.
And there was a 7-year-old child with them as well.
Where was that?
This was in New York. Yeah. So
Venezuela again.
Yeah, suspected Venezuela illegals found squatting in a basement of a home in the Bronx. Police found multiple loaded guns, 3 extended magazines, ammo, ketamine mixed with cocaine, and a 7-year-old child. One of the migrants had previously been charged with attempted murder for shooting someone in the leg. The police were called after one of the men was spotted with a gun next to a school. Neighbor said the owner of the home had been trying to get them out for the longest period of time, but couldn't thanks to New York's squatting laws. We've been seeing a lot. Dude, did y'all hear about the woman who kidnapped someone's daughter and like they found them in like a container somewhere and the police didn't even arrest them. They didn't prosecute them. Like it's getting crazy, dude. It's getting crazy. It's getting crazy. All crazy. Men except for 2 were released without bail. This is what the left votes for. Yeah. Crazy story.
It's all like, I really do believe Venezuela dumped their whole prison.
I mean, they said they did.
Yeah, FBI.
It's not even, it's not, it's a fact.
Almost every article that I've read or, watched, they always say Venezuela.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's the FBI admitted it that Venezuela emptied out their prisons. Yeah. And people are, man, they're in danger. And then these cities have these laws in place that allow people to squat, and you can't do nothing about it. All right, let's move on to this Jordan Peterson versus Destiny debate. For those that don't know, Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist who was also a professor who wrote the book 12 Rules for Life. He grew to fame because he was fired from his job as a professor of psychology in Canada after he refused to use preferred pronouns because the government there is more authoritarian than ours, and they will literally fine you if you don't call someone by their proper pronouns. They have a human rights council that they will put you in front of, and you can be jailed for making jokes over there. And he is, for some reason, debating a gamer / YouTuber named Destiny, who has become like this left-wing debater who goes on podcasts and stuff and debates people on topics.
Yeah, because most of them
won't do it.
Yeah. He's the only one who's willing to actually debate.
Yeah, I was gonna say that he's not even. I've watched his stuff, but he's not even that good at
He gets
debating,
owned all the time.
but he's the only one that will do it.
You know what he's good at? He's good at being snarky when he debates.
Yeah.
And I think he wins a lot because of that.
He talks really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, dude, because I'm trying to edit these videos and
you're speeding it up.
I can't speed him up.
Yeah.
Like, he talks too fast.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, he's one of these people that he grew up in a extremely religious family.
Catholic,
I think
right?
Cuban parents. He's Cuban American.
Well, conservative. He didn't really say.
No. He grew up in a religious. He went to like.
He said that.
He went to like Christian school, Catholic school, or something. He grew up in a religious household. But then he became extremely liberal as he grew up. Then he was in a polyamorous relationship. He got married to a woman from another country who they were in this like open marriage. And then he would constantly talk crap on the red pill community who would, make fun of his situation and talk about how this wasn't normal and natural. And then he ended up getting divorced because his wife left him for some other man that she was sleeping with, who now he's dealing with a divorce situation. So he's debating Jordan Peterson. Why?
I mean, they were talking about a bunch of stuff.
Jordan Peterson is just interviewing him?
Yeah, he just wanted to talk because he basically says it at the beginning, like, I can't get a lot of people on the left to debate me, so
he wanted him, he was the only one who was willing to do it.
Or to talk to me, have a conversation.
Right. That's interesting. All right, so let's check it out. Destiny. So this is on Jordan Peterson's Daily Wire show.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
His hair's not blue no more.
Got rid of the blue hair.
I think that sometimes there's a couple things. One, this is something I feel like I've discovered. People have no principles. I think that people are largely guided by whatever is kind of satisfying them or making them feel good at the time. I think that's a really important thing to understand because people's beliefs will seem to change at random. If you're trying to imagine that a belief is coming from some underlying principle or is governed by some internal, like moral or reasonable code or whatever, I think generally there are large social groups and people kind of follow them along from thing to thing, which is why you end up in strange worlds sometimes where, like the position on vaccines and being an anti-vaxxer might have been seen as something, 10 years ago as kind of like a hippie leftist. And now maybe it's more like a conservative or it's associated more with like MAGA Trump supporters or whatever. I think as a result of how the social groups move around. When it comes to you mentioned this like gigantism thing. That's another thing where I'm not sure if people actually care about gigantism or if they're using it as a proxy for other things that they don't like.
Just to give some clarity, because he says gigantism. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And he was just talking about the government becoming too big.
Right.
Like that's the whole gigantism thing.
Okay.
It's about big government.
Right.
And becoming too big where it's like a giant in a way, overpowering you.
Like a Nephilim, if you will.
Hey, you want to say that?
I do want to say that I have heard Destiny bring that point up multiple times. He always talks about that, how like your social group kind of determines what you believe in. He thinks people don't really stand on what they believe in, which is very, very, interesting from someone on the left because we've seen how their views have shifted a lot on certain things. But he is right in a sense because remember when this whole Israel-Palestine things happened, we saw a lot of people on the right who have been advocates for free speech and not censoring people and they've gone on about like how you can't just say everyone's racist. You can't say, and we've seen them kind of turn on that and over this topic, they don't believe in those things anymore.
Yeah.
So,
it's off limits.
Yeah.
Like I could totally imagine.
Well, I care about it.
Sure. Yeah, you might. Yeah, sorry. It just
That's
in
okay.
general.
That's okay.
Because like I could imagine somebody saying that like they don't trust like a large government, they think there's too much, prone to tyranny or something like that, but also be supportive of an institution like the Catholic Church, which is literally, one guy who is a direct line to
but they
God.
can't tax.
And
they don't have a military.
They
can't conscript you.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
And they can't throw you in jail.
That is true, yeah. I mean,
I saw this clip. Yeah, yeah. He owns him right there. It's like you can't compare the Catholic Church to big government.
Yeah.
Like that's ridiculous.
They're not. They can't force you.
You didn't think that one all the way through.
They used to be.
They used to have that power.
Right.
Yes.
Now
that's a fact.
Now they don't.
They could have you killed, boy.
You think about the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, I mean any part of when the Roman Catholic Church was in power back in those days, if you owned a Bible, you could be killed.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the kings of Europe, where it's enforcers in a
Right.
way, right?
I mean, listen, the whole Protestant movement was to break away from that regime, you know.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Those are major and significant. I mean, I get the overlap. Don't get me wrong.
Sure. But I'm saying, like, even if you had a local government, like if you had a state government or a tribe, usually they've got some form of enacting punishment. It'll be sometimes more brutal, but they can throw you in jail. Conscription hasn't existed in the U.S. since the Vietnam War. I mean, true. Yes.
Yeah, true.
He said it hasn't existed. No, it hasn't been instated again, but it exists.
Yeah.
Like you have to, when you turn 18, boys have to sign up. Girls don't have to do that, but boys have to sign up to be able to say, like, you can draft me. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I think that I guess when I look at
let's go back. Well, let's go back to to the redistribution issue. I mean, we pay 65% of our income at, say, upper middle class to upper middle class level in Canada. It isn't obvious to me at all that money is well used. In fact, quite the contrary. In my country now, our citizens make 60%. They produce 60% of what you produce in the U.S. That's plummeted over the last 20 years as state intervention has increased. I'm not convinced that the claim that the interests of people who lack opportunity are best served by state intervention. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, first of all, I'm aware of the relationship between inequality and social problem. There's a very well-developed literature on that, and it essentially shows that the more arbitrary, the broader the reach of inequality in a political institution of any given size, the more social unrest. So where all people are poor, there isn't much social unrest, and where all people are rich, there isn't much social unrest. But when there's a big gap between the two, there's plenty, and that's mostly driven by disaffected young men who aren't very happy that they can't climb the hierarchy. There are barriers in their way, and so there is reason to ameliorate relative poverty. The problem with that, to some degree, is that most attempts to ameliorate relative poverty tend to increase absolute poverty, and they do it dramatically. And the only solution that we've ever been able to develop to that is something approximating a free market system. I wouldn't call it a capitalist system because I think that's capture of the terminology by the radical leftists.
I agree.
It's a free exchange system. And the price you pay for a free exchange system is you still have inequality, but the advantage you gain is that the absolute levels of privation plummet. And I think the data on that I think they're absolutely conclusive, and that's been especially demonstrated in the radical decrease in rates of poverty since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989. Because we've lifted more people out of poverty in the last 4 decades than we had in the entire course of human history up to that date. And that's not least because the statist interventionist types who argued for a radical state-sponsored redistribution lost the Cold War, right? And that freed up Africa to some degree, and certainly the Southeast Asian countries, to pursue something like a free trade economy. And that instantly made them rich, even China. So that's an argument, let's say, on the side of free exchange. But it's also an argument, a twofold argument, pointing out how we ameliorate absolute poverty, which should be a concern for leftists, but doesn't seem to be anymore, by the way. And also an argument for the maintenance of a necessary inequality. Like, I'm not sure that inequality can be decreased beyond a certain degree without that decrease causing other serious problems. And we can talk about that, but it's a complicated problem.
Let's say that
Yeah, I mean, he broke that down beautifully right there. Like the free market system has taken so many impoverished nations out of poverty in the last 50, 60 years. I mean, I just saw a clip of the president of Guyana talking to, I think it was like a British reporter or something.
I saw that.
You saw that clip?
Yeah,
and they were trying to like get on him about climate change, about their carbon emissions. And he starts going off on this dude about how they have one of the most, the biggest forests in the world that have been preserved by their country that creates the most carbon, the amount of carbon dioxide it produces offsets anything that they're doing to try to generate oil.
Yeah.
So he was saying, like, don't come and talk to me about carbon emissions, when we're trying to raise our he's basically saying, like, we're trying to get our country out of poverty. But you want to come preach to us about climate change.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's the next part.
Oh, wow.
That's the next. He's talking a lot about climate change. But yeah, free markets. So the problem with, like what's happening in America and what's killed Canada is the regulations that they start to put in place. So you can call it a free market or, capitalist free market, but
it becomes crony capitalism. Yeah. It becomes lobbyists. It becomes these big mega corporations that are paying for their own enrichment, and it keeps the market from being free.
They pay a carbon tax.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, those are all the things that are being put in place. But what it does is it takes away the smaller guys.
Right. It totally eliminates the small competition because who as a small business owner can afford the minimum wage hikes, the carbon tax, the health insurance, all those things.
Yeah.
You can't. So they know that they can get those regulations put in place so that they can eat those costs.
Right.
I mean, Rockefeller did this with Standard Oil. I mean, he's the reason why they put some of these laws in place because he used to open up he would open up a gas station and lower his prices so much to eliminate the competition and raise his prices all around that by like a penny because it would offset that lowered cost. And he was just killing everybody else.
But again, like if you look at it, that's what selfishness does. That's what selfish ambition is.
Right.
It's demonic wisdom, right? So you see these things, they seem wise, like people be like, "Oh man, he was smart." Yeah, but look at the damage that he does. Look at the damage that's done because of this. Look at the damage that's done because of a BlackRock or these companies.
Right.
They're putting these things in place, and it's under the guise of benevolence.
And you can call it smart, but there's a difference between smart and cunning.
Yeah. Well, that's
you know what I mean. Like there's a difference. Like
it's definitely cunning.
But that's what I'm saying. Like cunning has more of a
manipulative,
unethical, nefarious.
Yeah.
But that's my point.
Yeah.
When people call it smart, then people are like, "Oh, you know what I mean?" Like that's
they
looking like they're like,
"Well, I want to be smart."
Yeah, exactly.
I want to be a smart businessman. I want to make money. If he's allowed to do that, then I should be allowed to do that. Yeah.
And that's why they call it smart, right? That's why they look at it and say it's smart. That's why you have all these like I get enamored at the different gangster movies that come out and people are in awe of yo, did you see what he did?
Yeah.
Look how he was smart.
Yeah.
But then he ends up dying. He ends up with nothing.
Yep.
Like he ends up going to jail. Like
they all
it never ends up good.
Right.
So why are we enamored with this stuff?
Scarface is idolized, on T-shirts, but the dude dies.
Is this
a horrible death?
Is this serpent wisdom?
Right.
You know?
But that's why it's like we have to change the culture around that, around even accepting those things as good.
Right.
Like I brought it up before on here, and I mentioned it from time to time. It's like just the fact that companies are allowed to lie to us on commercials. Like they're allowed to sell you by lying to you. And we just accept it. Like we know that it's to the point where everyone's like, "Oh, that's not true."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
like,
again, a lie is just a corruption of the truth. Like a lie isn't the opposite of the truth.
Right.
It's a corruption of the truth. You know what I mean? That's what they're doing. They're corrupting the truth. That's the serpent. That's serpent wisdom again. You know what I mean? And that's what...
Because they can say it's not technically lying.
Right. Exactly. Because you can base it off of these truths, right? But it's a perversion, right? And without clarity... and you don't have that understanding to bring clarity, you lose.
Right.
Like that's what lawyers do in the court of law.
That's what they do. Yeah.
How do you muddy up a law? Like there are intentions for laws that became muddy and became perverted because you lost the main point. You lost the soul of it.
Because people want to argue how we can get around it too much.
Yeah.
So they create all that's I mean, look at some people argue that the Talmud does that because it's like
definitely
debating the laws of Moses.
Yeah.
Around, like how can we like Ophir said something to us at the soccer field that was hilarious, that they have a saying in Judaism, because we were talking about the rabbi owning Pornhub, and he said a rabbi can make a pig kosher if he wants to. Like they can find a way to do it. You know what I mean?
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Right. And but that's also, again, it goes back to the fallen nature of man and how they became subject to the serpent, right? Serpent became the ruler of the world. Like we gave up. You said, what was the command? Be fruitful and multiply. He gave them dominion over the earth, right?
Yeah.
But we lost the dominion to the serpent.
Yeah.
The moment you take something in that comes from somebody, like think about it. If you take in wisdom and you apply it to your life, then the one who gave you that wisdom has dominion over you. If that person is not benevolent or loving in what they gave you, then what was the reason for them giving you that wisdom?
Right. and you accepting it is only corrupting you.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
We think we can accurately predict the climate and the economic impact, and we think that the climate impact would be far worse if we don't account for that, both in terms of human
I
conditions.
don't believe any of those presumptions. I
Sure,
think
but
they're
then if you
both
don't, but I mean, like, obviously, if I agreed with that factual analysis, I would probably agree with you on the prescription here too, right? And
Well,
like none of the climate models were accurate or couldn't accurately predict anything.
They're
I'd
not
also say why
sufficiently, well, they're not sufficiently accurate. That's the first thing. And because they have a margin of error, and it's a large margin of error, they don't even model cloud coverage well. That's a big problem. They don't have the resolution. They don't have nearly the resolution to produce the accuracy that's claimed by the climate apocalypse models.
People
Not even
keep saying
close.
that, but we just got another one of the hottest years on record. How many times are we going to have another hottest year on record? How many times are we going to have an increase of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere before we're finally like, okay.
I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because it depends. The scientific answer to that question depends precisely on the time frame over which you evaluate the climate fluctuation.
Right.
And that's actually an intractable scientific problem. So you might say, well, if you take the last 100 years, this variation looks pretty dismal. And I'd say, well, what if you took the last 150,000 years, or the last 10,000, or the last 10 million? You can't specify the damn time frame of analysis.
So again, this is the trick of deception, guys. It is isolation, truth in isolation, right? It gets you to focus on it in an isolated way, right? And how is this isolated? Because you're only looking at 100 years,
right?
And even in 100 years, how good were we at accuracy in terms of understanding,
keeping record
of the temperature, or even keeping, like, being accurate in keeping the temperature? You know what I mean? How accurate were we in keeping the temperature? So all these things come into play.
Right.
We're talking about 100 years.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
Out of thousands of years.
And the thing is, the people that believe in Big Bang and evolution, like, that is a microscopic
that's what's crazy.
Sample size.
That's what's crazy. Most of these people are that really, really believe in this climate stuff. They're atheists.
Right.
So on one end, you think the Earth is millions of years old, but on the other end,
you want to focus on the last 100 years of temperature.
It doesn't correlate.
Yeah. It's nonsense.
Frame is incredibly important. That would be like saying, look at your, let's say somebody developed cancer and they didn't realize it, and the person has lost, 40 or 50 pounds in the past 6 months. And I was like, you look very sickly. And you're like, okay, well, look at my weight fluctuation over the past 10 years. Like, well, it doesn't really matter. What matters
I'm
is
not saying the time frame isn't important.
Well, but I'm saying
that it is important.
Yeah,
I'm saying I don't know how to specify it.
Well, you would probably specify it with the beginning of the industrial age, right?
Why?
Because that's when carbon dioxide, which is a gas that's seen as trapping more heat on the planet.
Why is that relevant to the time over which you compute the variability?
Because it seems like as carbon dioxide has increased in the atmosphere, the surface temperatures have risen at a rate that is a departure from what we'd expect over 150,000 year cycles of temperature variations on the planet.
No, not with that time frame. That's just not the case.
It's absolutely the case.
No, what do you mean? You just flipped to 150,000 year time span.
Exactly. What I'm saying is that if we expect to see a temperature do this in a 150,000 year time span, in a 100 year time span, seeing it do this, that's very worrying. Now,
you mean like Michael Mann's hockey stick?
That's like taking, you're going in and literally zooming in and saying it does this. Right. But when you zoom out, it doesn't look like it does that.
Right.
That's the point.
That's the point.
It doesn't look like it when you zoom out. But when you zoom in, again, in isolation, you focus on it. Yeah, it looks like, oh my gosh, what's going on here?
Yeah. I mean, what about during the Ice Age? What would the temperature do there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Diane Page said our December was rain, cold, etc. Now in August, it's like summer. LOL. So it's climate boiling, right? No, it was hotter in the 50s and the 60s as children.
Yeah. I mean, the temperature thing is so, to me, it's like there's no way for you to really make sense of the temperature is hotter now. Like, come on.
No.
The one that's under attack right now in court by a major statistician who claimed that he falsified his data. I mean, that spike?
I'm talking about the record temperatures that have been declared for like the past 5 years that have also increased with the concentration of parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that every model is perfect.
They're
but
not
right
perfect.
now, sure, but right now we're like standing in traffic with our eyes closed saying the car hasn't hit me yet, so I don't think there's any coming. I think it's pretty undeniable at this point that there is an impact on climate across the planet. I
think that's highly deniable. We have no idea what the impact is from. We don't know where the carbon dioxide is from. We can't measure the warming of the oceans. We have terrible temperature records going back 100 years. Almost all the terrestrial temperature detection sites were first put outside urban areas,
Yep.
and then you have to correct. Then you have to correct for the movement of the urban areas, and then you introduce an error parameter that's larger than the purported increase in temperature that you're planning to measure. This isn't data. This is guess, and there's something weird underneath it. There's something weird that isn't oriented well towards human beings underneath it. It has this guise of compassion. Oh, we're going to save the poor in the future. It's like that's what the bloody communists said. And they killed a lot of people doing it.
Sounds like Pol Pot, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna bring the Cambodia out of poverty.
Yep.
Killed millions of people.
Under the guise of compassion.
Yep.
And we're walking down that same road now with this insistence that, we're so compassionate that we care about the poor 100 years from now. And if we have to wipe out several 100 million of them now, well, that's a small price to pay for the future utopia. And we've heard that sort of thing before. And the alternative to that is to stop having global level elites plot out a utopian future or even an anti-dystopian future. And that's exactly what's happening now with organizations like the WEF. And if this wasn't in
bingo, these globalist elites who don't follow any of these rules, by the way.
Nope.
They fly on their private jets. They go to these fancy meetings. They eat all
steak.
the best kind of food, steak and lobster, and tell us we're going to eat the bugs and we're going to own nothing and be happy. And we need to not drive cars and cows. Farts are killing us, but they can do whatever they want.
Yep.
Immediately impacting the poor in a devastating manner. I wouldn't care about it that much, but it is. I watched over the course of the last 5 years, the estimates of the number of people who were in serious danger of food privation rise from about 100 million to about 350 million. That's a major price to pay for a little bit of, what would you say, for progress on the climate front that's so narrow it can't even be measured.
I don't think the increase in hungry people in the planet is because of climate policies.
Why not?
Because I don't think that countries in Africa are being pushed away from fossil fuels. I mean, most developing
Of course they are. They can't even get loans from the World Bank to pursue fossil fuel development. And there's plenty of African leaders who are screeching at the top of their lungs about that because the elites in the West have decided that, well, it was okay for us to use fossil fuel so that we wouldn't have to starve to death and our children had some opportunities. But maybe the starving masses that are too large a load for the world anyways shouldn't have that opportunity.
Look at that. Look at that rebellion in Niger that we talked about months ago on here. What was that over? That was over the uranium that they were taking and giving to France.
Yep.
Meanwhile, their people had no electricity.
Starving. Yeah.
So you can build nuclear power plants, but we can't have access to energy here.
Yep.
You want us to be worried about climate change.
Yep.
That makes no sense. But you're mining our uranium and taking it to power your country.
Yep.
And making these backdoor deals with our president, and we're supposed to just be over here starving.
Yep.
That don't make no sense.
And that's direct policy from the UN.
And that's why, not to keep stopping it, but that's why BRICS is taking such a strong stance in Africa, because they're speaking out, they're agreeing with them and speaking out against this.
Yeah.
Fostered by organizations like the WEF. They're going to have to turn to renewables. Yeah, well, good luck with that, because renewables have no energy density. Besides that, they're not renewable and they're not environmentally friendly. And then one more thing. There's one more weird thing underneath all of this.
Okay.
Well, let's say if carbon dioxide was actually your bugbear and it was genuine. Well, then why wouldn't the Greens, for example, in Africa, the progressives, be agitating to expand the use of nuclear energy? Especially because Germany has to import it anyways. Especially because France has demonstrated that it's possible.
France is stealing it from
drive down the
Niger.
cost of energy with low-cost nuclear, and there'd be no carbon production. And then the poor people would have something to eat because they'd have enough energy. And that isn't what's happening. And that's one of the things that makes me extremely skeptical of the entire narrative. It's like two things. The left will sacrifice the poor to save the planet. And the left will deindustrialize even at the nuclear level, despite the fact that it devastates the poor. And that's even worse, because if you devastate the poor and you force them into a short-term orientation, in any given country where starvation beckons, for example, they will cut down all the trees and they will kill down all the animals and they will destroy the ecosphere. And so even by the standards of the people who are pushing the carbon dioxide externality control, all the consequences of that doctrine appear to me to be devastating even by their own measurement principles. We're trying to fix the environment. Well, boys and girls, doesn't look like it's working. All you've managed to do is make energy 5 times as expensive and more polluting. You were wrong. That didn't work. And I can't understand. You can help me. That's why you're here today.
It's so funny because it's like
so
you can.
passionate.
It's obvious that he's getting passionate, but it's the more obvious thing to me is like Destiny can't do his usual railroading that he does. With people where he
the
just
snarkiness.
he's snarky and he just talks over them and he just
Yeah.
talks real fast and he says a bunch of things and they don't have the capacity to counter him like Jordan does.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
He's
to
making
see that.
all great points, man.
Yeah.
You're talking to me. I can't understand how the left can support this.
Just one quick thing. Let's say that everything you've said is true. What do you think is the plan then? What is the goal? What is the drive? Like, why push? Why push? Obviously horrible.
I just want to say this because this is where everybody goes to.
Yeah.
Because they're like, they don't get what's the point.
Yeah, why would they do
do
this?
this?
Right.
They always ask this question, right?
Yeah.
but they're asking it not in really wanting to know.
Mhm.
A lot of times it's just like more like
to stump you.
Yeah.
Because they feel like this is where you're going to go to a ridiculous place of conspiracy theory where I can just now tell everybody to dismiss you because you're crazy.
Right.
Ideas for the planet and the poor.
That's a good question. That's
What
a
do you
good
think?
question.
he does that so well. He does that all the time. Let's back that up.
Like, why push obviously horrible ideas for the planet and the poor?
That's a good question. That's
What
a
do you
good
think?
question.
Well, because you're positing it, right? So what do you think is the driver goal?
Well, I listen to what people say. Here's the most terrible thing they say. There are too many people on the planet. Okay, so who says that? I've heard people say that for 30 years. Perfectly ordinary, compassionate people. Well, there's too many people on the planet. And I think, well, for me, that's like hearing Satan himself take possession of their spine and move their mouth. It's like, okay, who are these excess people that you're so concerned about? And exactly who has to go and when?
Those are the
and
poor
why,
people.
And how?
Yeah.
And who's going to make that decision?
Those are the strains on economies. First of all, so that is a masterful answer to the question because it's like they're telling you why. The same people that the Klaus Schwabs, the Bill Gates, the Ted Turners, these people that have been pushing these climate agendas, they've been pushing all of these policies. With the other side of their mouth, they're also saying that the planet's overpopulated.
Yeah. So what do you do about that?
Right.
How do you change that? They're not saying they want to get rid of people.
Right.
Like in any way, how is that any type of benevolence?
Bill Gates out of his mouth said through vaccines.
Through vaccines and reproductive care.
Yes.
Remember he said that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Abortion.
What does that mean?
Abortions.
Yeah.
And the vaccine, you see the vaccine is dropping these young kids, man.
They're the most heart attacks among young people in history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They tell you.
So that's a great point. Like the answer, you're asking the question, why would they do that? Well, let's listen to what they say.
Yeah.
And even if you're not consciously aiming at that, you are the one who uttered the words. You're the ones who muttered the phrase. What makes you think that the thing that possessed you to make you utter that words isn't aiming at exactly what you just declared? And so that's a terrible vision. But when you look at what happens in genocidal societies, and they emerge with fair regularity, and usually with a utopian vision at hand, the consequence is the mass destruction of millions of people. So why should I assume that something horrible isn't lurking like that right now? Especially given that we have pushed a few 100 million of people back into absolute poverty when we were doing a pretty damn good job of getting rid of that. And I just don't understand what's happening in Germany or in the UK. Like, it's insane. Like, look, man, if they would have got rid of the nuclear plants and made energy 5 times as expensive, and the consequence would have been they weren't burning lignite coal as a backup, and their unit production of energy, of pollution per unit of energy had plummeted, you could say, well, look, we hurt a lot of poor people, but at least the air is cleaner. It's like, nope, air's worse, and everyone's poorer. So, explain to me how the hell the left can be anti-nuclear. Okay. I don't understand it at all. Excess deaths in Europe.
Did he ever make a point? I gotta watch this because I gotta watch.
I would say, watch the whole thing. It's 2 hours long.
I figured that.
But to me, he didn't really make a point. Like, I think he talked the most on this next part we're gonna get into, which has to do with the vaccines.
Okay.
Where he goes in a little bit more harder,
Yeah.
where he's like really getting into his bag.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, he talks too fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even just going through this, you're just seeing like, to me, the thread through all of this has to do with the insidious nature of what's going on, the cunningness of this serpent wisdom.
Yeah.
I keep saying that because we got to see it from the beginning,
Yep.
right? This serpent wisdom that wants to twist things.
Yeah.
Wants to make it look, because think about the serpent. He's making it look like I got your best interests at heart, right?
Yep.
But really, he's got his own interest at heart.
He wants power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's. So with everything, and that's what psychopaths do.
Mm-hmm.
They want power.
Yeah.
It's the momentary, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm focused on the momentary, so I'm gonna do whatever I can to get it,
Mm-hmm.
right? In the moment. That's why, again, when you see all these movies, right? Momentary gain, like even in terms of like the pharmacies, There was the one I saw. I forget what it was called, but on Netflix there was this one about the pharmacies and the guy who Chris Evans.
Oh yeah,
was
yeah,
in
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And he and I forget the name of the company, but that pharmaceutical company. It was kind of like
the Sackler family.
The Sackler family, kind of the same type of thing, and they were using the same ways or strategies to get these doctors to use their drugs, right? To prescribe, right? Interesting, prescribe.
Yeah.
Like even in terms of like prescription.
Yep.
Because what do we do? We give you a prescription after we unsettle you off of solid ground, right? Then we give you a prescription.
Right.
So in that movie, what happens is they're killing it, right? But then there's a fall.
Right.
There's a huge fall. And it all falls apart in the end.
Yeah.
And that's what we see over and over and over again with this get rich quick.
Yeah.
This or just be selfish.
Unfortunately, like the way that they've set up for these pharmaceutical companies, man, like they have such a sweet deal that even if they do fall, it's so minimal. The amount of money that they've made doesn't even it does if I make $20 billion and you fine me $2 billion, I still made $18 billion. You know what I mean? So I'm good.
Are up about 20%, and they have been since the end of the COVID
Sounds
pandemic.
really high to me. 20%.
Go look.
I'll check afterwards, but
no.
What are you implying that you think it's because of vaccines?
I know.
What was that?
He was talking about
what's that at the beginning?
Excess deaths in Europe are up about 20%, and they have been since the end of the COVID
Sounds
pandemic.
really high to me. 20%.
Go look.
I'll check afterwards, but
no.
Are you implying that you think it's because of vaccines?
I'm not implying anything. I'm saying what the excess deaths are.
But what is your take on what's causing it?
One relatively straightforward hypothesis is that it's a consequence of the disruption of the healthcare system, the staving off of cancer treatment, etc. The increase in depression, anxiety, suicidality, and alcoholism that was a consequence of the lockdowns, the economic disruption. And there's plenty of reason to believe that some of that is the case. But the other obviously glaring possibility is that injecting billions of people with a vaccine that was not tested by any stretch of the imagination with the thoroughness that it should have before it was forced upon people also might be a contributing factor, partly because we know that it led to a rise in myocarditis among young men. And we also know that there was absolutely no reason whatsoever to ever recommend that vaccine was delivered to young children whose risk of death at COVID was so close to zero that it might as well have been zero.
When you're talking about a disease, the risk of death isn't the only thing that you worry about for the disease. The idea is that vaccines were supposed to help because it reduces your hospitalization, it reduces death, and it reduces transmission, hopefully by making it so that people don't get sick or don't get sick for as long. All three of those things, the vaccines did exceedingly well. They continue to do that to this day, but especially for the first variant and then the Delta variant, the vaccines helped immensely here. They were tested. The myocarditis rates are like 7 out of 100,000 injections, and the myocarditis is generally acute, and it's generally not as bad as even getting the coronavirus itself, which will lead you also
to
have a
much worse side effect than side effects that have caused other vaccines to be taken off the market before.
A 7 out of 100,000 rate of acute myocarditis or pericarditis is not a worse side effect than any other vaccine. I think that is a completely acceptable, given that the disease itself is more likely to cause myocarditis or pericarditis.
Yes, I don't think the data support that presupposition anymore. The latest peer-reviewed studies show that that's simply not true, especially among young men.
So there is an age bracket of young men where the elevated rate of myocarditis, acute myocarditis from the vaccine might have been higher, but we're talking about like 3 or 4 cases per 100,000 people. And again, myocarditis, pericarditis are generally acute conditions.
Well,
they don't last for very long.
I told you at the beginning of this conversation that the progressive leftists were on the side of the pharmaceutical companies.
It's not about being on the side of the pharmaceutical companies. It's about
really,
yeah.
What I see as the unholy part of that alliance with the pharmaceutical companies is that it dovetails with the radical utopians' willingness to use power to impose their utopian vision.
Well, then what do you make of the
otherwise,
fact
how
that-
would you explain it? Because the leftists should have been the ones that were most skeptical about the bloody pharmaceutical companies.
Look, in the first clip we showed of him, he was talking about how those positions changed, right?
Yes.
And Jordan Peterson is making that point back on him right now.
Yeah, he does it more.
Which is funny because, man, even did you ever see his debate with Candace Owens? He had Candace on his stream.
And he saw some of it.
It was she was kind of like during the thing. She kept saying to him like, "What are you doing? Like, I don't even understand what point are you trying to make right now? Like, because the way she was like, I think you're just like combative by nature. Like, you just have to argue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like,
well, that's what Jordan Peterson says. He says he's disagreeable, right? And he talks a little bit about that. I didn't put that in there, but yeah, it's his disagreeableness that even in terms of in terms of the left, a lot of people, they're more agreeable.
Yeah.
Where they'll give in to things,
Mhm.
right? But you can see where he gives into a lot of things, right? But then he'll fight in terms of why he gave in.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Because I think for him, it's more connected to like the desires to live how I want to live, right?
Yeah.
And he'll fight for that.
And they jumped on the vaccine bandwagon in exactly the same way that you're doing right now.
Pharmaceutical companies have helped us tremendously throughout the...
Right, there we go. Fine. No,
Modern
I don't
medicine
think so.
hasn't.
No, I don't think so.
You're just wrong.
I think they're
You're
utterly
completely wrong.
I see. So you don't think that the pharmaceutical companies who dominate the advertising landscape with 75% of the funding are corrupt?
I don't. Corrupt is a very broad.
No. It's
do you think that
corrupt
with
a tinge of malevolence? Do you think willing to extract money out of people by putting their health on the line?
Do you
don't
think
believe
that? Do you think that we get effective drugs from pharmaceutical companies?
Not particularly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Do you think that any vaccines work?
Yes.
Do you think that any?
I don't think 80 of them work at once for babies. I think that's a little risky.
But yet we've been on this vaccine schedule for how many decades?
Like
and babies
this,
don't...
not like this, not carefully.
I had a ton of vaccines when I was a child. I'm pretty sure that was the norm for people.
He's doing it again.
Yeah.
He's doing it again. He just showed him. Dude, it's been like this because we're looking and focusing on this very short, like, we're not even talking about 100 years here.
Right.
We're talking about 30,
Since
40
the
years.
80s, yeah.
So what do you got to see what we're looking at.
Yep.
You're not paying attention and you're not looking at the bigger picture.
Right.
You're focusing on this little part right here.
Right.
There's way more now.
Okay. And you think
you can understand why. I mean, look, part of it, no doubt, part of it is a consequence of the genuine willingness to protect children. But the moral hazard is quite clear, and people on the left used to be aware of this.
What do you think the mRNA vaccine, the speeding up of it came from? How do you make for the fact that it was Donald Trump that did warp speed?
Terror.
Yeah,
Foolish
exactly.
panicking,
Fear.
just like we're doing with the climate issue.
So you think Trump was
panicking?
Is it not possible that maybe people looked and they said, hey, if all the governments, all the institutions, all the schools, all the private companies across all the countries around the world are saying the same thing, maybe it is the case that this vaccine just helps. Is that not possible?
Oh, sure. Of course it's possible, but that didn't mean it was right.
Yeah.
They used force. They used force.
We use force for all sorts of things in terms of public
health. We don't
health.
generally use force to invade people's bodies.
How long have vaccine mandates been a thing in Canada, the United States, and the entire world?
I don't think they should have been a thing.
That's great if you don't think they should have been, but when you say we don't generally use force, we absolutely use force. We've enforced vaccines for a long time. It's an important part of public health.
Fair enough. We did it on a scale and at a rate during the COVID pandemic, so-called pandemic, that was unparalleled. And the consequence of that was that we injected billions of people with an experimental, and it wasn't a bloody vaccine.
It wasn't.
Yes, it was. No, it isn't.
It isn't a vaccine.
It's
not.
not.
Isn't it a 100% success rate? You think it's a definition of vaccine? Well, the point of the vaccine is to give your body a protein to train on so that your immune system works. Who cares if it's not the same? There's
They
different
used
types
the word
of...
vaccine so that they didn't have to contend with the fact that it wasn't the same technology.
There are different types of vaccines
There certainly are
different technologies.
Fine.
The mRNA vaccine is a type
This
of
used to
vaccine
be
technology.
vaccines. Now this is vaccines.
No, it was like this and now it's like this.
No. It was like this and now it's like this. The mRNA technology was a radical qualitative leap forward in technology. You can call it a vaccine if you want to, but it bears very little resemblance to any vaccine that went before that. And the reason it was called a vaccine was because vaccine was a brand name that had a track record of safety, and shoehorning it in that was one of the ways to make sure that people weren't terrified of the technology. And
I think the reason it's called a vaccine is because they're injecting you with something that's inoculating you against something in the future because it has proteins that resemble a virus that infects
there are
your immune system.
overlaps between the mRNA technologies and vaccines, to be sure, but they wouldn't have been put forward with the rate that they were put forward if they weren't a radical new technology. And it's bad in principle to inject billions of people with an untested new technology.
Bad in principle.
Yeah.
You don't inject people with things you don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean,
you haven't had the
just
proper
basic.
That our vaccines usually have to go through vigorous testing before you can unleash them on the public.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at least it's irresponsible. But if you're irresponsible as a father or parents, you can cause a lot of damage to your household and your children.
Yeah.
To me, but these are supposed to be our leaders,
right?
That we're listening to and giving our lives over to, because that's what we're doing with this kind of rhetoric, right?
And they want us to give more.
Yeah.
Isn't it also bad in principle for billions of people to get infected with a worldwide pandemic that initially was causing a decent number of deaths, a ton of complications, shutting down world economies?
Maybe it was.
Maybe
it was.
So shouldn't we be engaged in that analysis and figure out, like, if we look at
We're not engaging in the analysis.
No, because now we're talking about whether or not
pretending
vaccines are even vaccines or not instead.
No, don't play that game. That is not what I was doing. I was making a very specific and careful case. The mRNA technology.
Can you rewind that because he said it so fast?
Yeah. Yo, Jordan is good.
Engage in that analysis and figure out, like, if we look at
We're not engaging in the analysis.
No, because now we're talking about whether or not
pretending
vaccines are even vaccines or not instead.
No.
Yeah.
See what he did?
But see, this is what he does in debates. He's the one that takes it to that argument. He always shifts the argument real fast, so you can never get anywhere. But Jordan's good. So
don't play that game. That is not what I was doing. I was making a very specific and careful case. The mRNA technology, by wide recognition, is an extraordinarily novel technology.
And that doesn't make it not a vaccine, though.
Well, okay, it's a radically transformed form of vaccine. I don't give a damn. That still makes it something so new that the potential danger of its mass administration was highly probable to be at least or more dangerous than the thing that it was supposed to protect against. And we are seeing that in the excess deaths.
Absolutely not. So are you implying that the excess deaths were caused by the vaccines? Or
I don't bloody well know what they're
caused by. That's what you're implying now.
Well, look, if you're going to use Occam's razor, you're kind of stuck in an awkward place here.
I'm absolutely not looking at it. This is the most administered vaccine in the or inoculation or whatever you prefer to call it, the history of all of mankind. Every single organization around the world is motivated to call this out if it was a bad thing. You don't think Russia or China would be screaming if Donald Trump or the United States warp sped through a vaccine that was having deleterious effects on populations all around the world? You don't think there wouldn't be some academic institution? You don't think there'd be more than a handful of doctors and Rogan and some conservatives saying this vaccine might have been bad if it was the case that American companies working with companies in Europe and Germany especially, right, because that's where BioNTech is from, in order to create or manufacture a vaccine that was causing excess deaths all around the world? There are so many different people that would be motivated to call this out. How do you explain it? No, it's a handful of people. Where are the governments calling it? Where are the academic institutions calling it? Where are the other private companies calling it out? Wouldn't you stand to make it?
Wait, didn't Europe just ban vaccinating young people? Didn't a bunch of countries?
Yeah, they've
stop?
been.
Yeah.
They've
been called this out.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I know Sweden and Norway, and they did it first. Like, they were the one
but
of the
I
first
think
ones
like
to
the
do
UK just came out with that as well. I
think you're
I
right.
remember seeing articles about different countries in Europe banning this, other countries around the world banning, especially in young people.
Killing, if you were a private company in Europe and you could say, look, the mRNA vaccines for sure are causing all of these issues. Why wouldn't Putin, why wouldn't Xi Jinping, why wouldn't anybody else in the world call this out? It was as horrible as it was.
First of all, the number of people talking about something is not an indication of the scientific validity of a claim.
I agree with that, but
So exactly.
Yeah.
Like when he was saying all that, it just reminds me of the Jay-Z line that annoys me because it's
We don't believe
Jay-Z
you. You need more people. Yeah.
We don't believe you.
Yeah.
You need more people. Stop it.
Because then all you have to do to manipulate people is to get 99% of scientists agree that climate change,
Exactly.
So that manipulation becomes clear. All I have to do is say that everyone's saying this.
Yeah. And that's how we normalize things.
Yeah.
Right? That's how we normalize sex before marriage.
Right.
That's how we normalize. What are we normalizing now?
Whatever.
Smoking.
Everybody's doing it.
Smoking weed.
Smoking
whatever.
weed.
Right?
Yeah.
Whatever we normalize it by saying, well, they're
Everybody's
doing
doing it.
Well, everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
Well, what's wrong with it?
It's
They're
normal.
doing it. That's how we do it.
Yep.
That still doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that's not a correlation to success.
Right.
But this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, then why are you using mass consensus as the determinative of what constitutes
because
truth?
I think for
That's
something,
never been the case.
Because I think for something that was given to billions and billions of people, if this was something that was having a measurable effect on people, it would be impossible to cover it up or ignore it.
Well,
we wouldn't have to look at the one case brought up on a documentary. We would have to look at the one thing being talked about.
And what do you make of the VAERS data? There's more negative side effects reported from the mRNA vaccines than there were reported for every single vaccine ever created since the dawn of time. Tell me this then, because the core issue here is use of force as far as I'm concerned. You know, we examined some of the weeds around that. Politicians throughout the world, and this would be true on the conservative side now, in the aftermath of the COVID tyranny, because it was more a tyranny than a pandemic, are now saying that we actually didn't force anybody to take the vaccine. But what do you think of that claim? So let's define force.
I think it's technically true, but I think it's silly.
What do you mean it's technically true? Define
technically
force,
true,
then.
and that in the United States, at least, I think the idea, what they tried to do, they weren't able to do it because the Supreme Court shot it down, was Biden tried to make it so that OSHA, who's the body that regulates job safety, could make it so that employees had to get vaccinated. Now, eventually, that it was, or they'd lose their job.
Okay, does that qualify as force?
That's why I said technically.
Yeah, no, but it's a serious question. I mean, because we need to define what constitutes force before we can. It seems to me.
You could argue it's a type of force, sure. I mean, I think it'd be silly to say it's nothing. It is a type of force. It's the same as a cop telling you have to do this, you're going to be killed. No, but it's on the spectrum, sure, of course, yeah.
It's as much force as the mRNA vaccines are vaccines.
Sure. It's a type of force, and the mRNA vaccines are a type of vaccine.
Look, I really think the problem was with the COVID response. I really think the problem was the use of force. I mean, I can understand to some degree, although I'm very skeptical of the pharmaceutical companies, and far more skeptical than your insistence upon the utility of consensus might lead me to believe you're skeptical of them, which is surprising, I would say. How about if you're skeptical of anyone who's willing to use force to put their doctrine forward?
Then you're skeptical of literally every single person, political ideology to ever have existed in all of humankind. Some degree of force, you would undoubtedly believe this, right? Some degree of force is probably necessary for any kind of cohesive society, right?
No, I don't believe that.
Of course there is.
No,
even if you had a tribe of 100, 120 people, if somebody was stealing something, right? You have to punish that person.
I said earlier that becomes complicated when you're dealing with the psychopathic types, right? So that's a complication. But I would say, generally speaking, that the necessity to use force is a sign of bad policy. And no, I don't think, I'm not particularly Hobbesian. I don't think that the only reason people comport themselves with a certain degree of civility in civilized society is because they're terrified by the fact that the government has a monopoly on force that can be brought against them at any moment. I think that keeps the psychopaths in line to some degree. But I think that most people are enticed into a cooperative relationship, and that formulating the structures that make those relationships possible is a sign of good policy.
I remember you speaking very distinctly on this, that for instance, when two men are communicating with each other, there is an underlying threat of force that kind of puts on the guardrails those particular social interactions. For instance,
the threat of force is don't be psychopathic.
How broader is psychopathic here? Are we defining?
Well, I can define it. I mean,
sure, yeah, go for it.
Well, a psychopath will gain short-term advantage at the cost of long-term relationship.
Okay.
That's really the core issue. Well, you made it.
I wrote that down because that was such a good explanation.
Yeah.
I'll say it.
That was a bar right there.
Psychopathic, it's gaining short-term advantage at the cost of long-term relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's the opposite of Jesus.
Right.
Think about it. Jesus, he was looking to long-term relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's eternity.
Right.
So a lot of times, so again, what is God looking at? He's looking at eternity, right? You know how it says, like, I am that I am?
Yeah.
How God is called I am that I am, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, like, I am he who was, who is, and is to come, right? So a lot of times we're looking at, like, we're focused on our past, we're focused on our future. And that becomes the outcome. We're focused on our past and our present, and then that becomes the outcome of our future, right? So that's where I believe this type of wisdom will get you. It'll get you to focus on your past and your present, right? Right now, so that you can't see your future, but that leads you into your future, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it leads you into a future that's bondage.
Yeah.
Right? But what God does is he speaks to you from eternity. He speaks to you from a future place. He speaks to you from a hope. But the problem is you're so disconnected from that hope and from that place eternally, from how you see yourself and how you've been seeing yourself, how your family saw themselves, right? That it's hard for you to even believe that what he's saying is true. So when he comes and speaks to you, it takes time for us to catch up to that or to trust him, right? And that's faith. So through faith, we're made righteous, right? Through faith. So Jesus came to bring us into that long-term relationship. And he deals with what was short-term, right? In the short term, you're going to have to suffer.
Right.
Oh, so in the short term, you're learning how to deal with situations, issues, problems, but it's through suffering. It's through selflessness. But selfishness causes you to get people to focus on short-term problems, issues, right? To get you to get out of relationship with people, right? Because now how you relate to people is only going to be through how you see yourself.
Right.
So there's no real deep relationships anywhere. That's what happens in that kind of society, right? And that's what he's talking about. That's so profound to me.
Yeah. All right, let's pull it back up.
It's almost done.
A reference to something like that earlier in your discussion when you pointed out that people claim to be motivated, let's say, by principle, but will default to short-term gratification, less at the
For
drop of
social
a hat.
goods, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
So he again, what did he do? Just that he brought it back to what he said in the beginning.
Exaggerated proclivity to do that is at the essence of psychopathy. So it's a very,
Do you think, I'm curious,
immature
with this definition,
to do that. Claim to be motivated, let's say, by principle, but will default to short-term gratification, less at the
For
drop of a
social
hat.
goods,
Yeah, exactly. Well, the exaggerated proclivity to do that is at the essence of psychopathy. So it's a very,
do you think, I'm curious,
immature.
with this definition of psychopathy, does
It's
that mean
the definition of psychopathy. It's not it's not mine. That's the core of psychopathy. Psychopathy is more like it's more the pathological core of antisocial personality disorder.
Okay, maybe that might be true, okay.
That's a better way of thinking. Like the worst, a small number of criminals are responsible for the vast majority of crimes. It's 1% commit 65%, something like that.
Do you think, is psychopathy something that can be environmentally induced, or do you think this is core to a person?
It's both. So, for example, if you're disagreeable, like you are, by the way, your proclivity, if you went wrong, would be to go wrong in an antisocial and psychopathic direction. And that's more true of men, for example, than it is.
Do you see it now? So the reason why he fights so hard is because he doesn't agree, right? Something doesn't make sense. So he goes harder, but then he can't see it because he's smart, right? So because of he can talk his way out. He probably was one who could talk his way out of a lot of things in his life, right? He's intelligent in that way, right? And then as you're intelligent in that way, you start to see yourself in an arrogant way, in a higher way, right? And so then you look at everything in the world in that lens, and how you relate to people in that lens,
right?
And
you look at others as a means to your end,
right? And that's why you get into like even the what's it called? Polyamorous relationships. That's selfish.
Yeah,
you're literally you want to fulfill your desire. I don't, and it's like
someone else broke it down in a very intelligent way where it showed that your desire to do that is actually to control protect your own self.
Well, that was the guy we were watching on here.
Oh yeah, we watched that on here.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So like you see that in how he handled the relationship. Like you literally see that, okay, he gave into that as
he
a
recognized
way,
in himself, right, that he was doing that to try to control, even in his world view, of how he could deal with the world.
Yes.
Right? He couldn't deal with the world unless he saw it in that way and controlled it in that way.
Right.
So it's actually a control and able to cope.
Yeah. That's amazing because that's exactly what they're talking about there. Right.
Yep.
For women. That's why men are more likely to be in prison by a lot. It's 10 to 1 or 20 to 1 generally. It depends on the particular crime, with it being higher proportion of men as the violence of the crime mounts. So you can imagine on the genetic versus environment side. So imagine that when you're delivered your temperamental hand of cards, you're going to have a certain set of advantages that go along with them that are part and parcel of that genetic determination. And there's going to be a certain set of temptations as well. So, for example, if you're high in trait neuroticism, you're going to be quite sensitive to the suffering of others and be able to detect that. That's useful for infant care. But the cost you'll pay is that you'll be more likely to develop depression and anxiety. And if you're disagreeable, extroverted, and unconscientious.
That was it?
Oh, yeah. I must have. It cut off because it's 4 minutes. I can only do.
Okay. Well, that was good, man. Yeah. That was. I gotta go watch that whole interview.
I haven't seen Jordan Peterson that passionate in a while.
Yeah, Destiny is that type to bring that out of you because he's very, very snarky.
Yeah.
But I think Jordan handled him though.
Oh yeah,
yeah, he did.
Definitely.
I think
Jordan, I want to go watch it.
Yeah,
and even what he said at the end, like when you're too empathetic, how it leads you to become depressed
and anxious,
and so again, we said that at the beginning of this podcast that you can't be anxious and grateful at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So why? And I was thinking about that, like, why would you be depressed? And it's because you feel like you have no control over your situation.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yep.
So the reason you become more empathetic because you're more of a victim. See what I mean? Like, so your empathy is in you feel like you have no control, so you empathize with others who feel like who look like they don't have control, right? And which I don't think is necessary. I wouldn't say it is bad, but what I'm saying is that you can take that and you can turn it to somebody who has power, who actually can do something about your life, right? And that's where we turn our anxiety, our depression into gratefulness.
Yeah.
But you got to have somebody who is able to do it. You got to have somebody who actually can do it. That's why we don't put our trust in man, right? Man's going to always fail you. But if we put our trust in God, we put our trust in the one who actually can do it, we're always going to be grateful because we're always going to see something. If we turn to him, we're always going to see a way of escape.
Yeah.
And we're always going to have hope. You know what I mean?
Jesus said, be anxious for nothing. Right?
Well, he didn't say that, but.
Well, who said that?
Paul.
Paul said that. Right.
Cast your cares to him.
Yeah.
He did say that.
But Jesus did say, don't worry about what you're going to eat and what you're going to wear. And,
He did. He did. Yeah. In a way, he did
said
say
it like, don't worry.
Don't be anxious for anything.
Yeah. Shout out to Diane Page. She said, I did a convoy to Canberra, our capital city, against the mandates to try to stop the ones controlling our country, ordering us all to take it. There were almost 500,000 of us or more, but MSN says 10,000. Yo, they are such liars. Where did she say she's from? Australia? Yeah, it was great. Australia had those camps that they built.
Yeah.
We were talking about that on here back when they did that, and telling people to pay attention to what was happening in Australia. So shout out to you for going out there and protesting and speaking out against that, because a lot of people around this country, around this world, just kind of fell under the spell of fear that they were trying to push on everybody.
Yeah.
And then she said Japan has now pulled out giving the vax as their sudden deaths of too many. NZ Prime Minister, New Zealand Prime Minister has been given the information. Saw a live video of a number of days ago. Be interesting if anyone could put some light on this. I've tried searching, but I'm not very clever at this technology, but I'm learning. We could try to see if we could find some of that at some point.
And even like the fear thing, again, is connected to anxiety, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, when you look at the core of both of those things, it's selfishness, because I'm fearful for my own life, right? And it's funny because once we have the hope that's in Christ, we become unfearful of our life.
Right.
Unfearful of losing our life. We become unfearful of losing our life, right? It's the opposite. And we become, again, selfless. So it's just interesting to me that you're either going to become the oppressed or the oppressor if you are subservient to the ruler of this world.
Yeah.
But if you submit your life to Jesus, you step out of becoming an oppressor or the oppressed.
Yeah. Facts, man. That's good stuff, man. All right, let's leave it there. Thank you guys for tuning in. We had a bunch of people on Facebook and Rumble tonight. Appreciate y'all. Shout out to everybody who was tuned in on. If you're on Twitch right now watching, I know we always have a few people on there who watch us. We appreciate you guys too, man. Spread the word for us. Let's get our Twitch thing jumping a little bit too. Talking about real stuff over here. We're also live on Twitter as well. If you're watching on Twitter, make sure you share this video. Again, if you think these conversations are important, this is something that you want to support, feel free to sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/youngliontv. You can become a member over there. Sign up for one of the tiers for as little as $3 a month. You'll be supporting what we do and helping us keep this thing going and keeping our equipment getting better and being able to eventually like bring on guests and do more. We want to do more with this thing. So sign up over there on the Patreon, help us build this and grow the pride of the Young Lions. Also, don't forget our merch is available on jatan.com/shop, where you can get all of our t-shirts, hoodies. We got the Grateful line based off of our single that is doing well, streaming right now. It's available, but we also have Jatan shirts. We also have Young Lion merch on there, like you see Jake's hat there and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, that's it, man. Appreciate everybody for watching. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time, man. Peace.
Young Lion, go live, yeah. Young Lion, you rich, yeah. This kingdom has room, yeah. Go and fight people in, woo.